The rope creaked like an old church door as the wind combed the tall grass. Lantern light flickered against a crooked cottonwood, casting a trembling halo around a woman whose toes barely skimmed the dust. Mara Lee, 26, blue calico dress shredded to ribbons, one lens missing from her spectacles, gasped at the night. Each breath rasped. Each swallow scraped like gravel. Her wrists were tied wide to a branch, shoulders yanked back so hard the tendons quivered under sweat-damp skin. A noose bit her throat, forcing her to rise on the tips of her raw feet or choke. Boots crunched through mesquite. Spurs chimed. A figure stepped into lantern glow, and the world remembered how to be afraid. Silas Crowe. Long black coat slick with trail dust, jaw stubbled like iron filings, hair tied in a rawhide thong. And his eyes, one a pale winter gray, the other near black and empty, glimmered like two coins pulled from a wishing well at midnight. Folks called him the Devil's Eyes, and tonight he wore the name Easy. "Please, just make it quick," Mara whispered. Silas smiled. It didn't reach either eye. "Quick's for men who feel sorry." The wind shifted and carried the rancid tang of a doused fire. Somewhere beyond the dark ridge, a coyote yipped and fell silent, as if it had remembered who owned the night. Silas tested the rope with 2 fingers. The branch gave a bone-deep groan. Mara struggled to lift. The fibers squealed. Lantern light jittered across her cheekbone and found a smear of blood the color of old rust. "Tell me where he keeps it," Silas said, voice low as shovel song. "The rancher. The one with the gray mustache and the conscience. Elias Hart." Mara blinked through tears. "I don't know." He leaned in. Cold whiskey breath. A scar like a riverbed ran from his left ear down to the hinge of his jaw. "You do. You taught his granddaughter letters. You know the house, the barn, the safe with the iron door. You know what he's hid." "I know his Bible's well thumbed," she rasped, defiance hanging by a thread. "That's all." Silas plucked the lantern by its iron hoop and held it close. The light shivered. Soot trembled in its glass throat. "You ever see a sky go empty?" he asked softly, as if wondering on the weather. "I can make it happen to a person." Mara shut her eyes, braced for flame. What could a lone schoolteacher possibly know that would make a devil-eyed outlaw come hunting in the dark? The rope settled again, thirsty for weight. Silas tilted the lantern, and far off a single horse snorted, then stilled the ground with its hush. Silas hung the lantern so it swung above Mara like a floating omen, light wobbling over bark and bruises. He took out a long, slender knife with a bone handle, the blade thin as an icicle. "You know what I like about knives?" he asked, turning the steel so the flame crawled along it. "They listen. Guns shout. Knives listen." Mara's feet slipped. The noose tugged. She fought for height, calves burning, breath sawn into sharp squares. Somewhere under the chafing rope, her pulse tapped a Morse code. Live, live, live. She tried to focus on small things, sap oozing where the limb had been scarred by lightning, the milky moth orbiting the hot glass, the whisper of prairie grass rubbing together like 1,000 dry hands praying. Boots dragged in the dust as 2 of Silas's men ghosted in from the dark, Lark and Soda, lean as fence posts, starved faces lit by greed. Lark carried a coil of new hemp like a snake he'd charmed. Soda held an old Union lantern dented at the shoulder and a pistol with pearl grips that didn't fit the hand that wore them. Their eyes kept bouncing between Mara and the tree line, where every shadow looked like a drawn gun. "She ain't talking," Lark said, too eager. "Hang her till she's blue and see what words fall out." Silas didn't look at him. His blade traced the air just shy of Mara's throat, kissing the rope instead. He pressed scraped fibers. The branch groaned again, a worry in old wood. "Patience," he murmured. "You pull a seed out too soon, all you get is dirt." "Elias Hart ain't here," Soda said, chewing the fear in his voice. "Old man's got a way of arriving when you don't want him." Silas finally smiled again. "Then he'll arrive, because we borrowed something that belongs to him." He tapped the knife against the noose. "A conscience is a leash. Men like Hart can't stand the sound of suffering any more than a cavalry horse can ignore a bugle." He stepped closer until the bone handle brushed Mara's breastbone. "Last chance, schoolmarm. Where is the iron safe?" Her mind wove through the ranch house, the cracked porcelain wash basin, the nailed horseshoe over the threshold, the heavy iron box hidden under a trap plank in the back room. Its combination scrawled in a Bible margin in the faint hand of a dying wife. She could swallow the knowledge and choke on it, or spit it and live. Maybe, for a while. "I won't help you steal what isn't yours," she said. Each word cost blood and air. Silas made a tiny nick in the rope so fibers squealed and Mara's throat jerked forward. "Then you can hang here and think about who will cut you down when you finally stop making noise." Far to the south, thunder spoke. Close by, the grass rustled with decision, and from the ridge, a dry cough of a man's voice cut the night. "That's enough." The lantern swung. Lark and Soda turned. Silas only lifted his head, like a wolf tasting new wind. Elias Hart stepped from the shadow of the cottonwoods the way a man steps into a church, hat in hand, jaw set, eyes measuring the dark. He was 58, tall but worn, gray mustache like storm clouds at the corners of his mouth. His duster hung heavy with days on the trail. One shoulder slumped from an old Comanche arrow that never quite healed right. In the flicker, his eyes looked river clear and steady. He didn't point his rifle. He simply held it relaxed at his side, Spencer lever nested against his palm. The wooden stock had hairline cracks polished smooth by a lifetime of decisions. Beside him, his horse Dusty blew a tired breath and stamped once, as if swearing. "Cut her loose," Elias said, voice even as a plumb line. Silas regarded him with the curiosity a snake gives a hand that whistles. He didn't touch the knife. He didn't blink. He took a single step forward so the lantern rim carved a hot ring on his cheek. "I was beginning to think you forgot your manners, Hart." "You're trespassing in my God's night," Elias replied, "and tying up my people." "Your people," Silas repeated, tasting the phrase with mild amusement. He tipped his head toward Mara without looking away from Elias. "This one claims she's loyal to your house, but loyalty is a dog that will lick any hand with food on it." "Where's the iron box?" Elias's jaw worked once. The world squeezed down to 3 sounds: the creak of rope, the tick of a hot lantern, the slow crush of Elias's boot in the dust as he took one step closer. "Cut her down!" Lark's revolver jerked up halfway. Soda's pearl-handled pistol trembled toward Elias's chest and hovered there like a fevered thought. Silas's 2 eyes settled, unblinking. "I hear you keep a deed, a map, and a letter in that box. That letter is the reason you still have a soul." "Some men tout damnation to make a bargain look clever," Elias said softly. "You're not the first." "And yet," Silas said, "I am the last you'll meet." Elias breathed once, slow as prayer. Then he slid the Spencer to ready with a whisper of steel, a sound so gentle it made the night careful. "You'll forgive me if I outlive your prophecy." Mara's knees trembled. The noose gnawed her throat like a slow rat. Elias shifted his eyes, only his eyes, to find hers. He gave a small nod, apology and promise in one motion. Silas gestured lazily, and Lark began to loop an extra rope over the branch, humming. Soda sidled left, trying to gain an angle. "Friend," Elias said almost to himself, "there's a line where men stop talking." Silas's lips twitched, and we just crossed it. Friend, if you're gripped by this tale, hit that like button right now, because the fight is only just beginning. Everything moved at once. The lantern swung hard, shadows slicing across faces. The moth smacked glass and fell. Dusty snorted. Elias fired. The Spencer barked like thunder tearing burlap. Lark's hat jumped, spun, and flew into the dark with a whisper of felt, his scalp a red comet. Soda's pearl-handled pistol spat wild. The bullet punched bark above Mara's head. Rope fibers screamed. The branch sagged and snapped small twigs that fell like dry rain. Elias slid the lever, sweet clack, steel kissing steel, and fired again. Soda folded over as if bowing to an invisible judge, gun spilling from numb fingers. Silas flowed sideways, knife gone, pistol in hand as if it were born there. He shot once. Elias staggered. The bullet dug fire into his left side beneath the ribs and turned his breath to shards. Dusty reared, rain slapping Elias's wrist. Mara's world shrank to the noose and the knife shimmer in Silas's hand. He darted, cut the hemp above her wrists, not mercy maneuver, and Mara dropped hard, the noose snapping tight. Stars exploded in her head. Her toes scraped furrows in the dirt. Hands clawed, found nothing but air and grit. Elias lurched toward her, blood hot down his shirt. He braced one boot against the tree and hauled up on the rope with a groan that sounded older than his skeleton. With the other hand, he shoved his pocket knife open with his teeth. The steel tasted of pennies and rain. He sawed at the hemp. Fibers frayed. The rope bit deeper. "Breathe," he grunted. "Breathe, girl." Silas's men, what was left of them, pulled their courage together with the tatters of their hats. From the dark, two more shadows peeled free, Patch with the busted nose and Barlow with the nervous blink. Gunfire stitched the air. Elias dragged the rope with a roar, and Mara's throat found one sip of air. She sucked life like water and coughed it back into the night. Silas advanced, boots whispering in dust, pistol unwavering. "You should have let her hang quiet, Hart." Elias met him with a slow turn, knife still chewing rope, eyes steady. "I'll be quiet when I'm dead." Silas fired. The bullet clipped Elias's shoulder, spinning him half around. Pain rang like a dinner bell in his bones. He threw the knife. It fanned past Silas's ear and thunked into the cottonwood, quivering inches from the lantern. The light shivered. Shadows leaped. Mara, half strangled, kicked the tree, scrabbled up the trunk with torn nails. She found the knife handle, wrenched it free. Silas saw the motion, pivoted, raised his gun. And Elias dove, tackling Silas through the sheet of lantern light. The pistol roared wild into the sky. Both men hit hard. Gravel bit skin. Silas rolled like a cat, elbowed Elias's wound, drew a second knife that flashed like the idea of lightning. Mara sawed the noose with wet sobs. Fibers snapped. The rope gave. She fell in a soundless prayer. The ground met Mara with a thud and a flare of white. Air came in ragged pearls. Her throat burned like the taste of a house fire. She crawled, knife slick in her palm, toward the tangle of men. Boots churned dust into a fog of grit and gunpowder. The lantern swung madly, painting the fight in strobing frames. Silas's black coat, Elias's gray mustache streaked with blood, the flash of twin knives, the red mouth of a wound opening and closing. Patch rushed in with a howl. Mara rose to her knees and sliced at his hamstring without thinking. He collapsed, wailing. Barlow fired once and missed. The second shot tore the lantern free. It fell, shattered, and the night drank the flame. Only embers glowed like tired eyes in the dirt. "Light," Elias rasped. Mara rolled, grabbed the dented Union lantern Soda had dropped, thumbed the striker against flint. Sparks spat. The wick stuttered and flared. Light staggered up out of the dark like a drunk with purpose. Silas lunged at the brightness, knives in a hummingbird blur. Elias caught a wrist, felt the tendons scald his palm, twisted. Something popped. Silas hissed. The blade fell and bit his own boot. He swung the other. Elias took it in the meat of his forearm and drove forward anyway, bringing both of them into the cottonwood trunk with a thunk that shook a skirt of dust off the bark. Mara stepped in, lantern held high, knife raised like a trembling commandment. "Let him go." Silas turned his devil eyes on her. For a heartbeat, she saw the boy he might have been, standing at the edge of some hard town with no good roads out. He wrenched free an inch, enough to bring his pistol to bear. And Elias headbutted him, skull to skull, a horrid wet crack. Silas sagged and dropped the gun. Elias didn't hesitate. He used the last decent thread of his strength, lifted Silas's own knife, and buried it to the hilt beneath the outlaw's ribs. Silas Crowe looked down as if the blade were a misunderstanding. The black of one eye seemed to swallow the pale of the other. He smiled a little, maybe at a joke he'd kept only for himself, and slumped, coat folding like a night falling. Patch dragged himself into scrub. Barlow ran. Elias let him go. Some men outrun their bullets straight into gallows posts. Elias sank to his knees. Blood found him again. Mara dropped beside him and pressed cloth against his side, hands gentled by 1,000 slates and chalk sticks. "Stay," she whispered. "Just stay." Boots crunched softly, the slow gathering of the ranch hands Elias had sent to circle wide. Lanterns multiplied, little moons bobbing. A young cowboy with freckles tore his shirt into strips without being told. Someone cut the remaining rope from the branch. It fell coiling around Mara's feet like a dead snake. Elias's breath steadied by inches. "The safe," he murmured through a grimace. "You kept it." "I kept it," she said. "Because some things are meant to be kept, like deeds and promises." He nodded once. "In that box is a deed to land with water. Enough for all the families who work these fields and lose their crops to men like him." His eyes flicked to Silas's body. "Use it if I don't wake." "You'll wake," she said, and she believed it with the strange bell-clear certainty that sometimes visits the broken. Dawn unzipped the horizon with a pale seam. A cold breeze tasted of rain and iron. The cottonwood stood like a cathedral pillar, bark scarred by lightning and crimes it had been forced to witness. Anyone walking the ridge might have thought the scene a painting titled "Redemption After a Long Night." Elias let his head rest against the trunk. "Mara Lee," he said, voice scraped but warmer, "you aren't anyone's victim." She squeezed his hand, and the lantern light made a gold coin of their joined fingers. Around them, the ranch hands moved quietly, boots crunching, tack jingling, pulling the night to its feet. Someone said a prayer too soft for words, and someone else sobbed once like a knotted rope finally unspooling. Silas's body lay still, eyes open to a sky that refused to explain itself. The devil's eyes saw nothing now. Moral reflection. Sometimes the West takes what it can, but men and women of conscience take it back. Evil keeps time by the sound of fear. Goodness keeps time by the sound of someone cutting a rope. If you were in Mara's place, alone in the dark, a rope singing around your throat, what would you do? Like this story and subscribe for the next Wild West tale. And if you want to see how the next battle unfolds, don't miss the next story. Subscribe now.